Welcome everyone to Love and the Planets, and this is our special edition of the solar eclipse, which is on August 21st, 2017. And we're calling this one Trusting the Light Will Come Back On. And I'm Margaret Gray in Dublin.
And I'm Armand Diaz in New York.
So Armand, this of course is a huge solar eclipse which everyone has heard about, and our focus today is really on how is this going to affect our relationships. So when we talk about relationships today, we don't just mean significant other, we also mean relationships with children, adult children, small children, families, friends, and work colleagues. So we're kind of really looking at what's going to happen. And first of all, just to mention, of course, that with the solar eclipse, the moon stands between the sun and the earth. So it effectively cuts out the light of the sun. So one way of describing that is that kind of emotions really cover our consciousness. So from our perspective on earth, so the light goes out temporarily. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing to really look at is, how might the light go out temporarily in our relationships?
I think that is something that we feel in every area of life, and we certainly feel it in relationships. When we have a solar eclipse, the sun in the sky, one of the great constants of life, all of a sudden goes away, and that is extraordinarily unsettling. The source of life, the source of vitality, the source of consciousness in the sense of light and being able to see, disappears, and if only for a brief period of time. It's a rather humbling experience. And this one is in Leo. It's the sign of the heart, and so matters of the heart, and it's at the very end of Leo, which is extraordinarily heart-centered. And I think that it is a bit of a challenge. I mean, in a sense, do you have heart? Do you have the heart for it? And it's a bit of a challenge.
Yes, and it really entails a lot of trust, doesn't it? A trust that the light will come back. I remember being at the eclipse in England, in Plymouth, in 1999, and I remember all the birds just suddenly coming to a standstill. And there was a real split second where we were all looked at each other and kind of wondered, is the light going to come back? Is the sun going to shine again? And I think there are those moments in relationships, we all know them, especially long-term relationships, where really there's a sense of like, there's just this darkness that we don't quite know where we are, and there can be a little bit of confusion. And, it requires a lot of trust, to really think the light will come back on. And what can we do in that period? So really what we're looking at today is how can we navigate that? And particularly if this degree, this 28-degree Leo, falls either, in your own, personal relationship area in your chart, so either the 5th house or the 7th house or the 8th house, or aspecting the moon or Venus or Mars or your descendant, of course, or in the composite chart, then it's more likely to be particularly important for those relationships.
Margaret, with our clients, we've been seeing very much what you've described in terms of is this going to work? It's a question. We've had people that have been saying things like, I feel so much love, but I'm not sure this relationship is going to work. And I think that is very much that's very much reflecting this type of eclipse energy, this kind of, the heart is there, but it's it's covered up. And people will have questions about it. Is it working? Is this going to work? Is this going to last?
And I think one of the big feelings that can come up with that is a huge anxiety. So really just to say to everyone listening to this, try not to panic if anxiety comes up, if fear comes up, if confusion comes up, because they're normal emotions that may come up with the light going out. So what do you think can help us through this time in terms of our relationships, Armand, to navigate this period of, it could be a split second when the light goes out?
Well, I think that it would help to get centered as much as possible beforehand. And I think that you have to sort of work up the courage to kind of let go into it as it occurs, as it happens. When you feel that point of, the light being covered, I think you have to kind of accept it. There's really, there's an inevitability about it. And I think that, to sort of like let flow through that time rather than resisting it. People get scared of eclipses, you know, and they're going to go blind, and they jump under their bed and stuff like that. It's kind of silly, but you know, that is, as you said, you know, that is the experience. Like the sun gets covered up, and you say, "Wow, you know, this is big doings." So I think that it is important to kind of have that sense of, you know, this is a fearful moment, and you know, kind of breathe your way through it.
And also to remember that it is like a giant new moon. That's really what it is. And at the time of a new moon, there are also seeds that are being planted in the darkness. And so there's something being planted in relationships that is going to probably come to fruition in the next few months. So just to keep that in mind. One of the things I wanted to say is that the Sabian symbol for this eclipse is rather lovely. It's a mermaid emerges from the ocean waves, ready for rebirth in human form. So I think there's something about that that really describes that we emerge from deep emotions and are ready to manifest something. So maybe it's worth thinking about, you know, what are we ready to manifest in our relationships? What are we planting the seeds that we can later manifest? I think that's just something to keep in mind. And also just going back to what you said about Leo being hard, you know, Leo is also about generosity. It's about giving. It's about playfulness. It's about action rather than reaction. So I think, you know, maybe during this eclipse, you know, if you're going to see it, that's great if you're in the USA, but, you know, for us here in Europe, we're not going to be able to see it. So it might be a good time to do something playful with loved ones, you know, something spontaneous, something that's enjoyable, something that's Leo-like during this time.
That's a good idea. If you can pull it off, that's a good idea. If you're feeling for it, go right ahead. That is a wonderful idea. It may not feel. I don't know that folks are feeling all that playful this Leo season. But if you are, then that's wonderful. You know, the mermaid emerging from the ocean. It makes me think about maybe we're emerging from this whole Piscean time. We've been talking Pisces, Neptune consistently for this last year. And, you know, we had the Saturn Neptune square last year and so on. So maybe we're going to kind of pull ourselves out of the water a little bit and, dry out a bit.
That would be nice. And also another thing to mention that, of course, you know, Dr. Bernadette Brady talks about the Saros cycles, and this is Saros cycle 1 North, which already had eclipses in 1945, 1963, 1981, 1999, and now this one in 2017. So it may be worthwhile thinking back to those dates and thinking what was going on in your relationship life for yourself and with others. And just to read out what Dr. Brady says about it is unexpected events involving friends or groups place a great deal of pressure on personal relationships. These relationship issues may loom large as the eclipse affects the chart. The individual would be wise not to make any hasty decisions since information is distorted and possibly false. So it really seems very pertinent to relationships, this particular eclipse, and it's well worth, you know, just being careful what information comes up, because also, of course, Mercury is retrograde. So that kind of adds to possible confusion.
Yeah, I think that the statement in there that the group events are putting the pressure on personal relationships is something, you know, we've talked about this kind of all summer long. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, and it's not all about you and me, and yet it affects you and me. It affects your personal relationships of all kinds, you know, whether it's economic or social, political stuff that's happening. It does impinge. You know, we tend to think of the world as being something out there that we watch on the news, but, you know, eventually all that stuff filters down to us, and it's filtering rather fast now, or it's not being filtered at all. Some of it's just landing. And I think that, you know, this is something that, you know, we have to recognize and, you know, in a sense, maybe sort of almost shield relationship from it a little bit, in the sense of having the awareness that this is the pressure that we're under.
And really, that's where Saturn in our chart can be quite useful, can't it? Because it creates a boundary and a containment around relationships. And, you know, we may have said this before, but I think one of the things when they interview people about what helps relationships to last, you know, healthy relationships, is really a containment and a boundary from outside forces, so that the relationship is kind of really kept a little bit safe, kept a little bit of distance from what's going on outside. And I think, especially at a time of an eclipse like now, which is very intense, which, by the way, we're already, you know, we've been in for about a month really, and we're going to be in for, you know, certainly at least till the next eclipses. It's a particularly important time to shield the relationship a little bit from, you know, what's going on in the outside world as much as possible. So back to my idea about having fun, Armand, to kind of being playful if possible.
We'll try.
So what are you doing for, where are you going to be to see the eclipse?
I probably over here, or maybe on the other side of the room, or, you know, perhaps in the backyard. It depends what the weather's like. I mean, I think I get to see a little bit of it. I think I get to see a partial eclipse in the Long Island area. Although with the clouds that we're having this summer, we have an eclipse all the time. And how about yourself?
Well, I'm hoping to be in Dingle down in Kerry to see, so maybe I'll be out seeing Fungi the dolphin on the day. So that's my hope anyway.
You're going to be in Dingle seeing Fungi the dolphin?
Yeah,
Who names things over there?
We won't get to see the eclipse. So yeah, so I love dolphins. So that's where I'm hoping to be. So that's a fairly Leo thing to do, that it's playful and fun with friends.
And maybe you'll get to see the mermaid emerge from the ocean.
Yes, maybe I will. Well, we will see everybody again next week once the eclipse is over. So
fingers crossed.
Have a lovely eclipse. Yes, absolutely. Have a good eclipse, Armand.
You too, Margaret. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.